So this building that you see here, it's one of the buildings. There were two that looked just like this. This one was named after Fay. He was the head of the Fay Commission, and it's the Fay Commission that did all the research to make this all happen. And I'm going to go through that a step at a time so you'll be able to see. But what I wanted to do first was go through the buildings so that you know what we're looking at. So this is the map, and it shows, let me try hitting the right button. There we go. So 3 single-family homes. Those are the ones that face the street. So we have the Safford home, the Pollard home, and the Carter home. Those are right on the street, and so those are the ones that you see as you drive by. They were all built before 1800, so, and they were built very high quality, particularly the Safford house. What was built for the school was 4 dwellings. They called them cottages and named them after various people that helped out with getting the whole project going. And then you can see the garage, barn, and sheds is this U-shaped thing. The buildings were all connected. The hose house, carpentry shop, paint shop are all close to there. There's the hose and paint shop. And this says lumber shop, but carpentry. There was a school building with classrooms in it, and that would be, the school building is way up here, number 15. The chapel is down below it, number 17 right there. And when we look down here, things were added on after 1900, but by then we were no longer, it was no longer the same model. Those were added on to accommodate hardened criminal type inmates. So I'm going to go through them one at a time. The numbers correspond with the numbers on the map. So the Safford house is this building here. And right now it's being used by RFK. The interesting thing about this is that Mrs. Thayer, she used the house as a vacation place for women. And she called it Good Rest. And she would arrange for women that really needed a vacation, that were living in the city, to come out and spend a vacation there during the summer. And then in September, she focused in on moms that needed a break. And that's what September was for. So that was not actually used by the school until 1971. This is one of the cottages. It was built in 1860. The school was started in 1856. So this was built for the school when it was getting started. And there's a bunch of them that were. The Abner Pollard House was the first building, and that's one of the 3 houses that were facing the street. It's, I believe, the middle one. And they used it for administration after they had more buildings done. But for the first year, the whole school was in that one building. This is the Oliver Carter House. It was also built in 1750. So it's the 3rd house that faces the road and had a retail store in it. And that was a convenient thing for the girls. They could learn about shopping from going there. So this is the Rogers Cottage. It's identical to the one that I had up there first. That was the Fay Cottage. It's a dormitory. So dormitories, they were set up family style. There was a housekeeper and there was a house mother, I guess you'd say. There were never more than 30 girls in a building. The first floor was living space, and this is where the girls actually prepared their meals and they learned how to do the ironing and do all the housekeeping sorts of things they learned on that first floor. And things were not done for them. They were expected to learn how to do them. On the second floor, it was living space. So your house mother would be on the floor with them, and they actually had birthday parties there in the common space. So they were trying to create a real family environment there. And the third floor, teachers. The cottages were all set up the same way. So you can see the Fay cottage it's the same thing, it's just black and white picture in this case. This is the U-shaped building, and actually it's still in use today. They're storing equipment, maintenance equipment there, like state vehicles. And that was built 1855, so that was built for the opening of the school. And you can see it has a cannery in it. The girls not only learned how to do things around the house, but they worked on a farm and they learned how to can the food and other types of preparation. I don't know that they sold anything, but that would have been a good thing too. This is a hose house. I'm assuming it was probably had to do with fire. The paint shop and the carpentry shop. And see, these were all over in the same neighborhood with the barn. Putnam Cottage, another one of the dwelling houses. Campbell College, this one was built in 1935, so this would have been more like a prison. The Clara Barton College, also 1920. And that's interesting, it's got 8 porches. Commissary, so shopping could be done right on the grounds.
The commissary was just for the girls and the people working there, or was it open to?
No, I don't think it was open to the public. I think it was just supplies. It's where they kept anything that was needed for the school. Yeah. This is the classroom building and gymnasium. Now, I haven't been in the gymnasium, but I did have a chance to go through that building. It's a regular old schoolhouse. The girls had the common school education that everybody else would have, and they may not have had that opportunity where they came from, so this was an important piece. This is Richardson's cottage, and it's hard to see it. This was built in 1900. The tree kind of blocks it, but this was the best I could find for pictures. The chapel. This was a church that was on Bennett Lane. Does anybody know? Everybody knows where Sterling Road is, right? Across Route 70 from the end of Sterling Road. There's a road that goes toward the back and around the corner, and that's where this church was. And when the First Universalist Society, that was their church. That particular religion had a society in each town, and I don't know enough about them to know. They may have all been very independent of each other. I really don't know. Religion will have to be another topic.
So that was moved?
Yes, it was moved there. I think it's brick.
Piece by piece. Yeah, it'd be interesting how they did that.
Yeah.
It looks modern. I mean, you could say it's a very modern looking building.
It's very universalist.
Or,
yeah.
You could say, if you said it was built in the 1930s or 40s, you'd kind of go, yeah, you could believe just about anything in terms of
that would make sense.
The Universalists joined the Unitarians in, I think it was 1958 or something, and formed a combination, which is the Unitarian Universalist Association.
Yeah. They combined, yeah. And this is a hospital, also after 1900. Now, before there was a hospital there, in the beginning, so from 1856 until 1906, there was a doctor and a nurse that were there pretty regularly, and actually it was discovered that some of the girls were just being given medicine they didn't need and getting side effects from it, should have been diagnosed with something, and needed to have medicine in some cases. There was a lot they didn't know in the 19th century about medicine. But the care that was given actually got the children to talk about what was bothering them. And that was really helpful in helping them get to be like everyone else. Pines Cottage, so that was 1870, as the school was expanding. And that's the last on the buildings. So,
Could I ask, you have
yep,
an old slide when you first started, the one that was kind of rough, had a magnificent house on the right side. And it
yes.
was not, I don't see anything like it, almost as if it was 4 stories. It was a magnificent cottage, so to speak.
Yeah,
A brand house.
and I think it was the side we were viewing from.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I'm,
Whatever, I'll come back to it.
yeah.
Thank you.
Are all of these buildings still there? I'm relatively new to town, so.
Okay, yeah, for the most part, yes. 19 buildings. Yeah.
Do we know where the bricks came from?
There was a brick mill in Lancaster, so they could have come from there. The Shakers had a brick mill. Actually, up near the Fruitlands property, I believe.
So likely local.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. But there were lots of mills, and another great topic for this town. So what I wanted to do now was kind of explain, why is it a big deal that this was the first in North America girls' reform school? Why did we need one? Why girls? And in order to answer that question, we really need to understand what was going on in the 18th century. So we became a country, and by 1800, they could see, whoa, we really need to do something. They didn't know what to do with women. When they put them in jail, they weren't taking care of them. I mean, the jails were run by men. Women couldn't get jobs. There were actually more women, quite a bit more women than there were men. Things were getting out of balance. But more importantly, in the 18th century, everything was dealt with differently. You knew everybody in town. If you had a kid that was a challenge, everybody knew, and they'd help the kid out. And so everybody was in touch, and there weren't strangers that came into town because you were out in the middle of the state, right? So, so the whole way that things were dealt with was different, and suddenly there was this influx of immigrants, and at the same time that immigrants were coming into the new United States and wandering around the countryside trying to find a place, they tended to go to the cities. The Industrial Revolution was going on, one of the industrial revolutions. So people were getting 9-to-5 jobs, working in mills, working in the cities. People on the farm families were sending their girls in to earn money and send back to the families. All this was going on, so there was a great shift, and suddenly we have lots of people in the city and not enough places for them to live, not enough jobs for them. Women couldn't get jobs. They weren't allowed to, unless it was at the new mills. And
Or domestics.
and your life expectancy, if you worked in the mills, was, yeah, right, the domestics. Yeah, your life expectancy in a mill was about 2 years after you started working there because of what you inhaled. So what happened was we've got petty crime happening, we've got kids wandering the streets, nothing to do, so they find things to do. And people were afraid of what was going on. All these strangers, a lot of them couldn't speak English, but a lot of the immigrants could. Let me point that in the right direction.
Can you talk to the poor farms that one hears about in this area? Is that 18th century, by and large?
Yeah,
So-called poor farms.
there were in the 19th century
As
as
well.
well, but because there was tuberculosis
Okay.
was a real factor at the poor farms.
All right.
Now, there were other problems too, but it would have been nice if those had worked, but who's managing it?
Well, that's a big question. Yeah.
People who couldn't get jobs, yeah, so it wasn't as well thought out as what we're going to get into here. So we've, in 1800, there were 5.5 million people in all of the United States in 1800. By 1820, it had doubled, so there were 10 million. 1850, 23 million. So our population was growing quickly, but we wanted it to. It was all about manifest destiny and letting people know that great opportunities here, but not realizing the consequences of what was happening. We're showing here immigration numbers as well. 1830, 20,000 immigrants came in, but in 1850, 370,000. I mean, those numbers sound small compared to what today's world, but if you look at what the total population was, you realize that it was definitely enough to have an effect. 58% were English speaking, so there's the number for that. And here you're seeing the US population was tipping so that a significant minority, so noticeable number of people were foreign born, so they didn't know how things worked in our culture. These numbers are showing the changes in demographics. And I mentioned urban areas. People were moving into the urban areas. By 1870, a third of the population lived in urban areas, as opposed to 5 to 10 from 1790 to 1800. And then you've got 1800 to 1830. They're showing ages 15 to 25. So young people are moving into the cities. Then we get into the female population, and this was interesting. So in 1800, females outnumbered males by 6,000, with a population of 422,000, so less than 500,000. In 1850, it was 17,000, and in 1870, 50,000. And then the actual total population was not going up quite as fast. So you've got a lot of women that not only can't get jobs, but they can't get husbands. And
the ones that are married are outliving their husbands.
yes, and the Civil War was taking a lot of the men. Cholera, there was an epidemic of that in 1830. That took a lot of parents. There were a lot of children that were orphans. My favorite topic is Shakers, and that gave them the opportunity to have more generations because they took in all of those women with children and no husbands, and the orphans and all. So when the school opened in 1846, 15,000 people in Massachusetts were being supported by, we'll say the state, the communities. That's a lot of people to take care of, and no structure for it. So they were opening various types of homes for these people. They didn't always call them poor farms, but nobody really knew how to set up a model for it. So we're taking a closer look at women on this slide. There were decreased incentives for childbearing because they could see their children, they couldn't take care of the children. There wasn't, the schools were just starting to get set up. This is Horace Mann, was the beginning of the 19th century and didn't really get going until the middle, until 1850 or so. Not allowed to work outside the home, I've said that, except for, like you were saying, working in other homes. The women couldn't go to school. They could go to common school, but there was no reason for them to learn anything else because the men actually thought that if women worked outside the home, society would fall apart. The men knew that they needed the women to do the work. Yeah. Women were turning to prostitution as a way to survive. And that's an interesting thing because also what was going on here was culturally, we're in the Victorian age, prostitution was frowned upon.
But it was plentiful.
If you made one mistake, the men who were running prisons thought you weren't rehabilitatable. That's it. Once you've experienced it, that's it. You're
done.
And that's why they were just throwing the women into the prisons. They weren't allowed to participate in any of the programs because they weren't rehabilitatable. And it was the same thing for hardened criminals. If they thought they couldn't learn, they just isolated them. In some cases putting them together, overcrowding them. Religious movements were viewing women as the problem when it came to original sin. Women were temptresses and it was their fault that all this horrible stuff was going on. This is why some religions, New Life, the Shakers, the Awakening, trying to remember the guy's name now. Though they all believed that the women were the problem with original sin, and they believed in celibacy, that you had to repair your soul, and the only way to do that was celibacy, because you were born with original sin. So they mixed the men and the women together too in the prisons. Not a good thing. But they didn't know what to do with women. I mean, how do you discipline a woman if you're Victorian age? You can't touch them. You can't. Yeah. Just to add to all these problems, Catholics were being persecuted big time, and the Irish in particular, who had come over because of the famines in Ireland. Here I say particularly vehemently attacked. They were destitute. Their homes would get looted. People would be throwing rocks at them. The 1834, the Ursuline convent was burned, and it was rebuilt finally in, I'm thinking 1960s, maybe 50s. 1837, the rioting got so bad in the Irish neighborhoods. So if your house caught on fire and you were Catholic or Irish, firemen wouldn't even bother going to stop the fire. So when the firemen and the policemen are not doing anything to stop it, you got a real serious problem. And what came out of this was, I guess we can't use volunteer firemen and policemen anymore, and they had to get organized, and the cities had to have police forces. So that's what happened with that. There was so much going on. It was just incredible. What happened is the state came up with the idea, we got to look into this because we got all these people going to jail, and the jail is not rehabilitating them. They're not getting better and coming out, and the crime is still happening, and more are going to jail. And you see all these kids running around the streets in the poorer neighborhoods, and they're going to end up in jail too. believe it's Francis Fay. He's from Framingham. Any of you familiar with Framingham? You must know the Fay School. The library was funded by Fay there. He was like the Thayers here. He funded the whole city of Framingham. But I want to jump ahead just for a second and tell you, he was so invested in this commission that when they started implementing the independent school for girls here, he moved here so that he could be close to it. So that's really saying a lot. So the American view, we're a new country, we have a new kind of government, we need to set an example for the world. The Second Great Awakening, so as far as religion goes, they were encouraging people to create heaven on earth. Reformers embraced a new social theory that there was potential for goodness in all. Well, gosh, I'm glad they woke up to that. So,
Novel idea.
so now we get into philosophies of how to take care of these people and how to figure out why things are going wrong with them. Well, we know about nature and nurture today, and that's what they were thinking about. So you're influenced by your environment. That was the environmentalism that people believed in. But the other side of the coin was anti-environmentalism, but they called it heritability. So if your father was a murderer, you're going to become a murderer. We can't do anything to help you. And that's not going to make much progress. So there were arguments going on about back and forth about whether that was really true or not. So some people were believing you were born with tendencies of your family. But that was starting to turn around. You're being influenced by your environment. Those people were actually the ones that were winning the arguments. They were discouraged that jails were not showing success. Society was realizing that children are actually rehabilitatable. After all, they haven't been exposed to as much. If we can catch them before they're exposed, if we can identify the ones that are at risk, then we can really, we can plan for the next generation to be improved in that way. And so that's kind of what they were thinking about as they did research. Now, when they did the research, they went to all the jails they could find in the United States, which there weren't a lot by that time. The United States had only been the United States for less than 50 years. And they also went to Europe. So let's see what they found out. So there was Thomas Eddy, and he said, if we separate out the petty thieves from the serial killers, maybe the petty thieves are rehabilitatable, even if the hardened criminals are not. And by putting them together, they're influencing the others. They could be a bad influence on them. So people started thinking about that. Well, gosh, maybe we need to separate out the different types of people and have different programs for them. Now, with all of these jails, except Sing Sing, they started out with a good model and slowly deteriorated because the state would say, oh, you're spending too much money. Do you really need that program? We have a better place for the money to be spent, that kind of thing. So Newgate in New York, they came up with the idea of religious and moral training, common education, and hard labor. And that worked for a while. But when the programs got canceled, it got cut back to hard labor and just marching through the day with their no programs for them to go to. No, you need to teach them skills to get jobs or whatever, something. Anyway, that failed, and it was replaced with Sing Sing. Sing Sing made, no bones about it, harsh punishment, no rehabilitation. So we can say that was a failure from the beginning. And the ones I skipped over, Walnut Street Jail in Philadelphia, Jeremy Bentham had an idea for a model prison. He called it Panopticon. And his idea was to segregate every individual, total isolation. That doesn't really work that well either. Some people go crazy when you isolate them. Then we have the Auburn prison in New York, which was a little bit better. You still slept in isolation, but during the day you had your group and you did group things together, probably hard labor, but you had daily routines that you did as a group. When you were not working on your tasks, there had to be silence and you were marching far enough apart that you couldn't have conversations, that kind of thing.
Are there any great names coming out of this, this movement? It's Fay Commission. I'm just curious. Muckrakers, Susan B. Anthony. My dates could be off, but I'm just wondering if there's some famous names that come out of this.
There were, I think I mentioned Eddie, people who came up with philosophies so, and approaches, and of course Faye. And there were families that invested a lot in it. That's why the buildings were named after the different families. So that was part of it. They also agreed to take on the girls as they became trained. So here we have the requirements for this new school. At least 50 acres, bordering on a pond, river, or a brook, partly woodland, interspersed with trees, southerly aspect. Oh my gosh, that's exactly what, I think it was called the Stillwell Estate at the time. I never found out who the man was, but it was somebody local in Lancaster who donated. And the figure that they had, where I got that information, was 110 acres. I've also seen 140 acres. The piece I gave you mentions 140 acres. So the school opened in 1856, and you can see the requirements were an environment where you could relax, where you could find things to do that are fun, little girls playing in the stream, that sort of thing. Time to sit under a tree and write a poem or read a book, or that. They're trying to make it different than the neighborhood those kids were coming from. As the commission was doing their research, society was changing their point of view on women, children, industrialization, education, and job training. So I touched on that a little bit. Introducing job training into prisons was a new concept for them. Education beyond common education was also a new thing. And I did see a reference to a superintendent at the Lancaster school that he didn't think these girls needed to go beyond learning basic housekeeping chores, whereas the house mothers and the housekeepers felt that these girls had potential beyond that, and they should be given the opportunity if they have the interest. And they won out. The Fay Commission research influence changes as, okay, so here you've got the different types of things that were set up. Mental hospitals, reformatories, public schools, orphanages. Various urban missions were created or modified. And there were prisons that specialized in different levels of care. This was all part of the big picture of the Fay Commission, and the Lancaster School for Girls was just the first step. As I said, it was the first. It was the first in North America. It was the first family style, and I've explained what that model is. Is everybody with me on that? New theories about reforming youth. They didn't focus on youth prior to this model. It was treated, it was referred to as a model, a reform first. Hey, look at this, look what we're doing. Other states were coming and looking at it. The article I gave you is about Maine, the state of Maine coming down, and 10 years after the school started and what their reaction was to it. They loved it. They thought it was really amazing. And I mentioned it earlier, it was part of a bigger network that was just beginning. The Lancaster Industrial School's impact on society. So there was a bigger picture than just the school. Women are being noticed, children are being noticed. There was an understanding that women had needs. You did have to feed women if they were in prison. I mean, basic stuff they weren't doing for women. Heredity does not necessarily play a part. So if you're heading down the wrong path because your parents are both criminals, you still can be rehabilitated. The importance of community and family in the healthy growth of children. So if you have a good model, a good example that you live in and day out, then maybe you will grow up to be an adult and continue with that. Changes need to be made as a society grows in population, and that's a little bit bigger picture there that needed to be studied and needed to be looked at. Changes in society occur as changes happen in the workplace. An interesting, just a side story, there was the Hudson River landscape paintings and how beautiful the Hudson River was. Somebody built a hotel with the idea that people working their 12-hour days in the mills need something to dream about, and that's what the paintings gave them, but they built the hotel on the Hudson River for these people to go for vacations. And who were the first people to go there? The painters. Who were the girls? 55% were stubborn. Stubborn was a magic word. See, if you said your child was stubborn, if you told the judge that your child was stubborn and you just couldn't control the child because she was so stubborn, that was a foot in the door.
But that was still being used in the courts in the 70s.
Was it?
Stubborn child, yeah. It could be something like, essentially, you can't get the kid to go to school.
Yep.
It could be something along that line.
Yeah, I want you to know, it took 5 hours for me every morning with my son. So I know exactly about that, but I was not going to give up. And people have to go to work. Stubborn is the one at the top there. And you can see the other things, drinking, sex, and the other things are all related to sex because these are girls. Girls are getting accused of all kinds of things. And then there were more serious things, property crimes. So because they have nothing to do, they're vandalizing things. They may be homeless, so there's no place for them. So they might break into a barn and sleep in there. Guardianship. I didn't mention this earlier. When the girls come to the school, the school becomes their guardian. The girls understand, we are your parents. We're going to take care of you. We're not going to give up. And we're going to be there for you. And when you leave, if you want to come back, you're welcome to come back. And some of them did. Some of them came back as teachers. Really, these people loved the children and really helped them as much as they could. So during the first 30 years, less than 35% on average had 2 natural living parents. So these were kids from very challenged situations. 75% left the school to lead respectable lives. We're looking at the 50 years, 1856 to 1906. Was there another jail that had a 75% success rate? I doubt it. I really doubt it. But they were starting from the idea of there's nothing wrong with these kids. They've just come out of a bad situation, and we can help them by setting a good example, by giving them a good foundation of a family situation. So some were institutionalized, some died. Yes, there is a cemetery on the property there. Some died before the age of 25. 94% of their parents were foreign born. Almost all of them spoke English. 53% of the girls were born after their parents came here. After 50 years. We've got nurturing family atmosphere, job training, businesses and families supportive and giving the girls a place to go when they were ready to go out on their own. Unfortunately, that became a challenge as time went on. It was tougher to get placements for the girls, but it wasn't because the girls weren't ready or the families had bad experiences. It was more that they weren't hiring, they weren't bringing in servants as much. Life was changing, family situations were changing. Some went back to their families, some lived on their own, some worked as staff in other houses, some got married and had families. These are how they judged them to be successful. There were letters from some of the girls that had left saying, one said, if I hadn't had the experience at that school, I wouldn't be where I am today. And then talking about her situation, how happy she was to be living in a family situation, you know. Yeah, and there was another girl who became a director of a school like this in the Northwest. There was a girl that came back to Lancaster as staff there to help other girls to be more successful. So they also identified with the school as being a positive thing in their lives. There were some that had mental illness, and that's, and some that ended up going to other jails because they weren't all perfect. But hey, 75% of them at least could get by. So at this point, does anyone have questions?
Was there an age limit as to when the girls were admitted or taken into the school?
That's a good question. Oh, I didn't talk about that. There was. So what they discovered was if the girls were over 15, they became a bad influence on the girls that were 8 to 12. So that wasn't a good situation. So they limited it to girls that were under 15. And at age 15, they went to another facility for teenage girls. This is what happened after 50 years. And I'm saying the same thing all over again because, as I said, the other jails, funding was cut, programs were canceled, and what happened with Lancaster was they said, no, all your inmates are going to be over 15 years of age, and they're all going to be criminals. And so after 1900, it wasn't the same school. It wasn't the same model.
Was there any sense of, if they're hardened criminals, big fences or anything to contain the people within the neighborhood? I mean, it sounds like a jail, right?
Yes.
Hardened criminals should have been big fences or something.
Yeah,
and guards.
And there wasn't.
Interesting. Okay.
There wasn't. Yeah, you got a good point there. But I've been in the building where the hardened criminals were, and a narrow room, maybe 5 feet longer than the length of a bed, and the width of 2.5 beds. So, Maybe not even that big, one bed, and that was it. The other side of the room was a chair and a table, that was it. They shared a bathroom, yeah, and it was, and when I looked down the hall, it was just room after room after room that were all like that, and each one had a window.
And no sense of the Lancaster police being called for inmates breaking out and causing trouble or things like that?
Yeah,
That comes from
Well,
Lancaster
most-
Shirley Prison.
Okay,
But-
yeah, right.
but most people don't know that there were inmates there
Interesting.
after 1900.
Okay.
Well, it was later that the
That it,
school officially closed, because,
1973.
yeah,
Is that right?
because when I was working, I was doing site testing for Madonna Hall, that was a diagnostic center.
Mhm.
And a number of the women who had worked at Lancaster School for Girls
Mhm.
ended up being cooks and whatever at Madonna Hall.
Oh, wow.
But the girls that were coming in to that particular facility were not hardened criminals.
Mhm.
You know, unless, it was, you'd get a mix of kids that were abandoned by their families, or I think one of the lines was protect from sexual abuse. So that a number of the girls that were in those programs were not even, petty thieves or anything, it was, and then that facility, the building became used for a woman's prison. And I think at some point after that, it became a co-ed prison. But even then, even when it was officially
But,
I think it was for a while, it was people who were 6 months away from
Yes.
being released.
yes,
Or
yes,
at-
that-
That's the late 80s.
Yeah,
well,
late 80s.
well,
So-
that was up until
So
2013,
you
actually.
really
So
weren't
far.
needing, if you were 6 months, if you were 5 months away
Yeah,
from actually being free, maybe you didn't need a fence.
right, exactly.
But
Exactly.
there was never, since we were here last 40 years, there was never fencing.
No,
Right.
I don't remember any fencing, but I've only been here 10 years, so
Mm.
I'm still new, yes,
So am I.
yes.
There was a family in Bolton that we knew that were held captive by one of the male inmates of the so-called pending release program, where he had taken drugs
Mm.
during the day and knew he was going to fail
Turn
the
the
drug
lights.
tests that they did frequently.
Yeah.
And in desperation, he
Yeah, that
goes
was
up to
certainly
Wilder Road in
improved his-
Bolton, and he holds his family hostage, basically trying to get a car, and he dashes. He didn't harm them. They played it very well, the family did. And he got the truck, went out to Western Mass, and was captured in pretty short order. But basically, he was desperate that he was going to be found out for
Well,
this drug test.
so that they eventually, at some point, they closed both prisons.
Exactly, right.
Massachusetts, given some of the legislation, we don't have as many people in jail and in prisons now as
Look at
we
Concord,
did
it's amazing.
a number of years back.
Right.
So, just even getting prison crews to help with different
Sure.
town projects,
Yeah.
it's harder to do because they
Yeah.
don't have as many prisoners.
Well, what
But getting back to this-
when I had to get an escort to do some research on the Shakers in the prisons over here, MCI Shirley and
Shirley.
Susan Baranowski, and what our escort said was they're all hardened criminals
Yeah.
now, and they don't let them out, and
Right.
you
No, we
wouldn't.
get them
you-
from the Evangelista, the
Yeah,
sheriff, or from Concord.
yeah, and there aren't many left in Concord,
Concord's
from what I
closed.
understand.
Maybe.
But we're still getting the
Yeah.
occasionally
Amazing, isn't it?
can get a team
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
Is that where the guys come from?
That's,
For the library? With
the last couple of years they've come from Concord. Prior to that, they came from the sheriff. But Sheriff's Department says the same thing, there aren't as many,
Right.
Mhm.
you know, they don't.
Semi-good guys.
So maybe things are getting better crime-wise.
So where does this RFK come into play, if you could? The RFK something, you see signs there,
Yeah, I don't know when that was
and is that
started.
still there?
It is,
RFK is still.
But
What does
it's-
that mean?
Oh, it's a,
it's,
RFK was the facility for troubled
It's children.
teenagers,
Right, there you go, okay.
or children.
children,
Okay,
children, and it's now been combined with,
With Perkins School, which is
all right,
the big building on Main
Yeah.
Street, which was a longstanding residential program for
kids that don't
mentally
fit,
challenged
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
Right.
primarily.
kids that don't fit in public
So you would
school.
often see someone helping a bunch of kids on little motorbikes go through a course on the lawn down by Still River Road, 110.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, well,
is that part and parcel,
It
you
could
think,
be.
or something?
I know that I live on Neck Road, which is kind
Right,
of behind Perkins.
yeah,
And every once in a while, you know, you run into a group going out for a walk,
I see, okay,
you know, with their staff.
yeah,
And I don't know what changes,
But that could have been from Perkins.
that's from Perkins.
right.
Yeah,
But we only had one time when we had, some kids ran away from RFK, and
Yeah.
the police cruiser came by and said they might be in your backyard. And I said, if they are, they're covered with poison ivy. They'll be coming home soon, itching and scratching. But the coverage is pretty good at both of those. It's very good at Perkins, and it must be pretty good at RFK, because I don't think the neighbors are affected.
we
I have a
had
question.
someone show up at the knitting group once. At our knitting group on Monday nights, there was someone from one of those schools.
Well, there were, Perkins also at some time had adults, you know, who had been in the school and
Yes, yeah.
and continued to live there. I don't know if they still do that.
Question, those employed at the school, were they mostly women, men? Do you know?
I don't know, but I would
It's probably
suspect
mostly women.
mostly women
Okay.
because it was a women's,
Well, they did a lot of sewing and cooking and whatever.
and these are, things that women, especially in the 19th century, women would have been more interested in doing. Yeah.
I have a question.
But
When the school was flourishing, how many girls were there at one time? In the whole,
You said
So
there were
I-
30
the whole
building.
complex?
I had, they went through 2,850 years,
say,
yeah.
50 years?
So never more than 30 in a
Oh,
building.
okay.
Yeah.
How many cottages?
Well, they added some, so.
Some,
it's-
as the
Okay.
time went on, yeah.
Yeah. So there were, it varied.
Were they mainly from Massachusetts, or they get sent from other states?
Oh, no, this was strictly
Strictly
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, each state was handling their own problems, and that's why, actually, when Maine became a state, they realized they had the same problem we had, and that's why they came down and looked at the Fay Commission and the research they had done, because it was quite extensive when you figure they went over to Europe and toured the reform schools over there, and actually, the one that most impressed them was in France. So that's, but what they did, it all made sense. I don't think there's any kind of program like that today where they take children at risk and give them a family situation. It's later on, halfway houses, that sort of thing.
You do have early intervention.
Yeah,
foster
but
parents
it's
and what
not,
have you.
it's not a living situation.
No, it's not a living
It's not
situation, but
residential.
it's a way in to catch problems.
Yes,
And also now we have so many kids in daycare, that's another place where, you know, people could be on the lookout for problem
Potential
situations.
Problem kids, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they were taking kids, you know, that suddenly somebody realizes this kid has been living on the street for the last 6 months, we better do something about it.
Yeah, yeah. So
Did they find that there'd be several from a family being sent?
well, there were definitely parents where they just said, I've got too many kids, I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
And that happened with the Shakers too, they got kids that way. And the Lancaster School, when the girls were ready for a more relaxed environment, they would try out the Shakers. But what the Shakers found was they couldn't invest the time that you needed to for the girls. Because, you know, you have a routine and you're moving from one thing to another with the Shakers, and with the girls, you'd have to stop and go at their pace.
Did the Shakers have a local, it was just the Shakers that I think of in the western part of the state?
Oh, no, Harvard.
Oh, that's right, Harvard, that's right.
Yeah, and it was,
Yeah.
it was one of the bigger Shaker communities, and Shirley, where the Shirley jail is. That was, and actually, the South family of the Shirley village was in Lancaster. Yeah.
The Shakers were more, their program was more a family, a mother with her kids would come in, and they would work with that unit, right?
No, the kids would be separated from the parents when the parent, and the parents
And
would.
Shakers, and the
Yeah,
Shakers.
and the parents would be separated as well. And the women who, I don't think, there may have been, yeah, there were men that took care of children as well, but it was the people who loved children and loved taking care of them, they were the ones that took care of the children. You didn't have to rotate through that job if you didn't want to, yeah.
Are there any similar institutions like that left here in Massachusetts? Kind of built on
No,
this model?
no, because they've cut,
All funding.
and they cut programs. You've got to have the whole picture. You've got to have the family lifestyle that includes all of those inmates doing the housework. You know, you're cooking dinner tonight for the other 20 kids in the house, you know, that sort of thing. You've got to have that foundation, plus have what they called common school then, and learning job skills.
Well, the philosophy changed to doing things supposedly in the community, so that, what was the year for Reagan, when all the state hospitals
Oh, yeah,
were closed.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was,
Yep.
so a lot, and those programs, with a few exceptions, moved to group homes and communities, and of course, the communities didn't want to have the group homes in them.
And the people that were running the group homes burned out quickly,
They burned out, and a lot of times they didn't have the training they needed, so,
or the money.
or the money, so I can remember situations where psychiatrist had, say, a schizophrenic patient, well-controlled on medication and doing really well, and someone in the group home would decide he doesn't need the medication anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and stop giving it to them, and of course, you get blood levels, and,
Yep.
so the effect wouldn't be there right away, but 6 weeks later, you'd be back at
Yep.
point zero.
Isn't there a group home in Middleton for boys?
Not that I know of in
Yeah,
Littleton.
when I used to teach in Littleton, I thought there was some kind of a home or facility for young boys.
Yeah.
They did not attend our school though.
Actually, I have, so state reform schools, these are all from a while ago. Westboro, Marlboro, Lancaster, Bridgewater, Shirley, where the jails are, same one. Boston Farm School, New York House of Refuge, Dorchester, Rutland State Home, Little Wanderers Home, Pittsfield, there was an almshouse, and there was a state primary school, and I don't have the location for that.
Was that-
John
I'm retired, so
Augustus
maybe
Hall
something
in
like that.
Westboro, and there was one called Neshoba in Bolton. So there was in addition to this school, there was a boys' reform school in it would have been in Bolton, because it was over near where the high school is now.
Same location.
Same,
Same location.
is it? Yeah?
I'm actually asking, I'm sorry,
Um,
because I've never heard of anything like that.
I don't know, Doug, the cameraman knows where it is.
Yeah, looking at the old topo maps, it's very close to where Neshoba High School is now.
Oh, okay.
So they built this facility for girls, so were they doing it for the boys too then?
Yeah, yes, the Marlboro Reform School embraced that, the family setting sort of thing, but they didn't carry it to the same level. And the one in Shirley, they lived in cottages, and you can still see them there. They were using the Shaker buildings for it, yeah. So they did parts of it, but you have to follow through. And these women that took care of the girls were very dedicated. And I think part of the success was that the choice of women working there.
And what's the quick status right now on the property? I know this thing called DCAM owns it.
You need to go to the meeting on Monday.
Oh, sounds good. Okay. All right.
Yes, and
So we're proud of it.
How many of the buildings are still there?
yeah, somebody asked that before. I don't know of any that have been removed.
Because whatever it is they're going to do, they obviously are going to have to take down, if there are buildings there,
They
and
have,
they build something else, they're going to have
They
to
have
take some of them down.
yeah, they have said that they want to save some of the buildings, and they've said that the barn, they thought was worth saving. So the three that were built in the 18th century, I don't think they're going to be able to save them. But people really want the Safford home to be saved. That's the one that Mrs. Thayer called Good Rest. Yeah, and that one is being used by JFK now, so it's not within the boundaries of the map that the developers are looking at. Yeah, but it's, believe me, it's worth it to follow this if you live in town.
Was the piggery that's on the other side of 110,
Right.
was that part of Lancaster School for Girls, or did that come later, or?
Their land did extend over there.
It's part of the property.
Yeah,
It seems to be.
yeah, and that's why I say 140 acres.
It's a big piece of land.
Yeah, yeah, and the girls, they did farming,
It is fun.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.